Hello, and welcome to another review video. This time around, I'll be looking at the Sanrio rerun. There are a whopping 65 Sanrio units that are split across 3 REMs. Sanrio 1 has most of the previously released units. Sanrio 2 has all of the new and somewhat new units released during this run and the previous one. And the 7-stone REM only has 7-star and above rarity units in its lineup, whether they be from Sanrio 1 or Sanrio 2. I do think it's a way better idea to roll in the 7-stone machine since you'll be cutting a lot of the useless units from the lineup. The units that are noteworthy are either from bundles and or exchangeable, but for those trades, you'll need 6-star and above Sanrio fodder, which you can guarantee in the 7-stone machine. Still, I would try to avoid rolling as much as possible in any Sanrio machine since most of these units won't be too relevant for long. I'm not gonna go through every single unit since there are so many. I'll mainly be focusing on the ones that are exchangeable, the newly released, and those that have a little more value than the rest. So let me start off with Sophie-san was one of the best gets from last year's Sanrio run, but that's no longer the case as we have better replacements with the same active skill, and if you even want to get this unit, you'll have to venture into the Sanrio 1 REM, which doesn't have much of value. Atelie Kitty could make up a 4-unit system, but these are very inflexible. One comparison could be an Amiel system, but a Atelie Kitty system doesn't have follow-up attack, doesn't take care of an important mechanic like void damage shields, nor is it as fast. She is exchangeable, but I wouldn't bother at all. These 2 new units are 7-star exchangeables, but neither look that interesting. Bono Kuromi is a worse, dark version of Rimuru that does way less damage and generates less orbs. Gouten Bad Badtz-Maru pretty much only serves as a damage spike loop and occasionally expands your board, which altogether doesn't offer much value nowadays. These are also new 7-star exchangeable units, but trading for them is as questionable as the previous 2 units. Hangyodon is good as an Amiel team leader for the Sanrio Colo, but that's about it, and this is not the only leader that you can use to farm that Colosseum. Hangyodon's active skill and leader skill don't offer much value in either form, so I don't see why you would want to exchange for this. Aiden is a new low cooldown rainbow board maker with a decent damage output, at least the Evo form, since it doesn't depend on killers. You could put 3 in a team and guarantee a board and loop the HP buff and spike, but Rainbow has plenty of orb generators, so this unit has a lot of competition, and it's probably not one you would look at if you already have a Geno team. Exchanging for Aiden is a bit questionable, but I think it's understandable if you're an avid Rainbow fan. Orya Kitty might be meant to be used with Pad Island, Orihime, and Hikoboshi, but this Sanrio's unit's active skill doesn't offer much in that team, as you could run other big shield options like Ogi from Code Geass that don't require 15 Sanrio units as straight fodder. Prim Ahiru no Pico is the orb skin unit, but I wouldn't bother purchasing. They're meant to work with regular Prim, but as it stands, she is very weak, and this Sanrio unit doesn't help all that much. The active skill on this unit is nice, but it would have been better if it were on a shorter cooldown or if it were able to pierce damage void shields like regular Prim's active skill. You could run 2 Sanrio Prims as leaders with a regular Prim to close the orb generation loop, but regular Prim's active skill is not that consistent, so half the time you might be unable to deal any meaningful damage. I would definitely skip this bundle. Prim is not in a good place, and this unit is not gonna bring her back to life. Both of these units have pretty decent equips with haste active skills and useful awakenings. Ora's Evo is a decent enough cleric with utility and damage potential, but you can only get these units from the Sanrio 2 REM. This machine has a lot of the new units, but most of the 5 and 6 stars in the machine are not that useful. If you're rolling at all, I would do the 7-stone machine because even if you don't get anything good, anything that you roll can serve as straight fodder for all the new exchanges. These 2 are also unfortunately only available through the Sanrio 2 REM. Both are great damage equips that also add some utility. Zill's active skill doesn't help much, but all of those OEs are not that bad. Noctaria Kitty is a great 10C equip and the only one with a team HP and blind resist. You could also make a system with 4 Noctarias, but again, you have to go into the Sanrio 2 REM, which I would really try to avoid. Nova Kitty is the batch unit, so you can purchase for $30 or exchange for 20 Sanrio units. Unfortunately, your trade fodder can only be 6-star and above Sanrio units as opposed to other previous batch units that were able to take the lowest rarities as fodder. So the exchange is very expensive and not all that worth it. This unit has 2 Dead Awakenings, since you're mainly going to do light BDPs and ideally change their sub-attribute to light. So even if you're matching a water break, you won't have anyone with a water attribute that will do any meaningful damage. The only place I've seen Kitty Nova being used is in SN3, which hopefully by now you've tackled and isn't that high of a priority. That cookie cutter team has these 2 units as leaders with 2 regular Novas, Circlia, and Plotka as subs. The 2 Novas are necessary since you need 2 of them to loop the Orb Gen and auto heal effects. So if you're missing most of these units, I wouldn't even look at this Sanrio unit. Even if you have all of these, I still struggle to see these units appeal, since they currently don't have much use outside of SN3. Maybe if SN5 is a Sun Dungeon and boosts Dragon or Physical types HP, these teams might make a resurgence, but I wouldn't hold my breath. I would definitely skip this exchange and save the $30. The unit doesn't have much use, and neither does the badge, since full or close to full Sanrio teams are not relevant in the meta if you care about that. Dorna Pompompurin is a decent pierce unit that can also tackle either damage or attribute absorption shields depending on the Evo. I am more partial to the Evo version since it can deal more damage than the base form, but at the end of the day, both forms are not that useful considering that pierce units are really not that relevant at the moment. If you do need the attribute or damage absorption voiding effect, there are plenty of units with similar cooldowns, though if you need both effects to last 2 turns with the fortune cooldown, only the dual Lucifer unit qualifies. Dorna Pompompurin is exchangeable for 5 6-star GFEs or 6-star and above Sanrio units. And even though this unit's active skill could come in handy at times, I would try to prioritize the other units coming up next. Atelie Kitty is a decent rainbow sub and leader. It mirrors regular Atelie's playstyle, where you need to match a lot of TPAs to deal damage, but the Kitty version is able to scale her combos with each TPA and has a different condition for damage reduction. The Kitty version doesn't swap on transformation, but you don't need to since her base leader skill comes with a 7x6 board. That does mean you might be required to run the leader swap resist latent instead of the usual pierce, attribute absorption, or unmatchable recovery ones. By swapping on transformation, regular Atelie doesn't have to worry about the leader swap mechanic, but that comes at a cost of having a higher cooldown transformation active skill than the Hello Kitty version. On the flip side, regular Atelie has to possibly tank another hit if an enemy is unable to leader swap, so the Sanrio version might have the advantage there if you're unable to stack enough bulk. Unfortunately, 5 effective HP is about average nowadays, and her leader skill doesn't provide a raw HP boost, so you won't be able to tank any hits after undead animations without a shield. With Atelie Kitty, you pretty much only need 1 copy in a team since her active skill loops, so she'll pretty much be serving as a looping roulette unit. The lack of time buff is unfortunate, but at least her damage cap rate is pretty high at the moment. Obviously, as a rainbow unit, it's hard not to wonder how it fares in a world where Geno exists, and since Geno has a much better leader skill, at best, Atelie Kitty can only serve as a sub in Geno teams to work as a roulette counter. But this unit will be competing with Ordeal Ra and both feline Raffines, who are also damage sticks, but generally provide a bit more to the team. Atelie Kitty is exchangeable for 15 6-star and above Sanrio units, but I would save my fodder if you already have a Geno team. If you do wish to exchange for her, I would only get 1 max, since I don't see the value in trying to make a 3 Atelie Kitty system work. I think it's unnecessary when we have access to low cooldown rainbow board makers like Aiden and obviously Geno. Alexander Kuromi is last year's BGM. This is a rainbow damage stick, but unfortunately, this unit has to transform twice, which will be a real hassle if the first floor is not delayable. Once finally transformed, they don't offer all that much apart from bringing big damage. Yes, 11 billion cap rate on a unit with 3 attributes with a high personal damage multiplier is a lot of damage, especially for a rainbow unit since these can ignore defense. But it's very hard to compete with a unit like Geno since his cap perk effect is able to loop and he also takes care of any board shrinkage. Maybe if Kuromi's active skill were on a 2-turn cooldown, I would change my mind since they would at least compete with Geno in a more even playing field. Their leader skill gives a raw HP boost to devil types, which is somewhat restrictive and suboptimal since you'll need someone with an 81% damage reduction leader skill to be able to survive a 500% gravity without a shield. Raffine Kitty qualifies and is meant to be their pairing since her leader skill also requires devil type. So if you do want to run a Sanrio heavy team, a Kuromi and Raffine Kitty might be the team for you. It will be very expensive since both of these units are bundles. In addition, if you want to roll them, you'll have to venture into the Sanrio 1 machine, which barely has any good units, or into the 7-star machine, which does have better rates, but is obviously slightly more expensive. Kuromi's equip has a long-lasting auto-heal active skill, which has some niche applications in some dungeons. For example, some experienced farming Thai teams use this equip to forget about healing in the billion title dungeon. It's also kind of the closest thing that we have to this Marvel equip that we in NA didn't get. Still, this one doesn't break a shield, which is what made it so great for SN3 speedrunning teams. It's kinda hard to argue in favor of spending $30 on this equip since its use cases are very niche, but maybe it will be of interest for people that hope Digimon comes to NA and have plans to farm XP with this tight team that can almost get 3 billion rank experience if you watch an ad. The equip isn't totally irreplaceable though, but this is one of the more optimized teams that I've seen that look somewhat NA friendly. We technically have everything if we get Digimon, but we are missing on Wolverine's equip's buffs. I think the most notable parts about this equip are the 2 skill boosts and the light resist. These are 2 possible replacements, but I haven't looked too closely into this to see whether it'll be a 1-to-1 replacement. But I digress. We don't know if we'll get Digimon, and getting this Sanrio BGM on the off chance you'll use their equip is not worth the money in my opinion. Chakeol My Melody is a decent wood cleric, but their active skill is a bit on the long side, considering it has a 1-turn delay effect in it. Apart from the cleric effect, both forms essentially give you a 2x HP effect, though the actual HP buff on the Evo can be stacked with the shield for an even higher effective HP number. Because of this, and the fact that the Evo can reduce 4 turns of assist removal with 1 L, the Evo is the way to go. The damage will be lacking though, since L teams are pretty much non-existent, but if you go out of your way to match Ls, My Melody might be able to pull their weight damage-wise if you put in the effort. It is unfortunate that this unit is limited to wood or rainbow teams, and even in the latter, you might not be able to guarantee the 5 wood orbs necessary if you don't run a roulette and only depend on a rainbow board maker. At least with Kohaku, you have better chances of generating 5 orbs that are either light or water. Even though My Melody's active skill is a bit long for my liking, the delay might come in handy, especially in newer dungeons where a lot of enemies can be delayed. After looking at the other exchangeable units, I would come back to this one, since it only requires 5 units as fodder, as opposed to the next unit. Ollie KIRIMICHAN is a decent cleric that excels both in damage and utility, though as with Chakeol My Melody, they are locked into teams that can use their soul attribute, and unfortunately for this unit, their pre-transformation active skill is very restricted, so you're gonna have to go out of your way to ensure those 8 or more water orbs. The only relevant team that might have an easy time generating those needed orbs on turn 1 is a Rimuru team, which can also definitely benefit from Ollie's 7x6 leader skill. So if you run Rimuru or Bridal Natsu, this might be a decent trade, but again, like with My Melody, their active skill might be a little bit on the long side. Also, water teams might not have that much in the near future. We might get Matt from Digimon and Ariel from Disney, but we honestly have no idea if we'll get either collab. The Ollie trade is very expensive since you're gonna need 15 6-star or above Sanrio units. Raffine Kitty is a strong rainbow unit that can be a good leader or sub. Because of that, the first question to ask is how does this unit affect Geno teams? Well, as a leader, Geno still obviously has the upper hand, even though Raffine Kitty has higher effective HP, but this orb skin unit can still be a decent Geno sub. She's sort of a side grade 2 Ordeal Raw. Both that unit and Raffine Kitty raise your sub's damage caps and gives them an attack boost, but with this unit, you have to worry about transforming twice. At least with Ordeal Raw, you can put an equip with a haste or a delay. With Raffine Kitty, you won't be getting any effective skill boost with her transformation active skill. On the other hand, Raffine Kitty has more utility with her double crosses and double L, but I think generally, Ordeal Raw is a much better option, especially knowing that in the near future, he'll get a buff to further increase their damage multiplier. Since Ordeal Raw is way more accessible, I really wouldn't pull or purchase Raffine Kitty, especially so if you manage to get Feline Raffine from Monster Hunter. But if you value utility, obviously the Sanrio version is slightly better. Veroah Kitty has been a staple for egg drop farming and buttoning. There really isn't much to say about this unit, and if you haven't gotten a copy or two, I would highly consider getting a copy of her since she's a pretty inexpensive trade that only requires 6-star GFEs. At the moment, the Gonho collab is rerunning in JP, so even though there aren't many places to farm egg drop in NA, you can prepare for future pie farming, as this is the only unit with 3 dungeon boost awakenings and an egg drop rate boosting leader skill. Orya Pochacco is a new BGM card that could have a lot of use in all of its forms, so you might be very tempted to purchase this unit for $30. The base is an utility, focus, attribute, and damage absorption voider that also soars board strings. The active skill's voiding effects last 2 turns on essentially a 6-turn cooldown, which is about average nowadays for these type of effects. The delay aspect of the active skill might require some planning ahead if, for example, you want to 2-shot a spawn with an absorption shield and super assault as soon as possible. Otherwise, the delay aspect is not that important in my opinion. This base ROM also has a lot of utility, but it sucks that you can only use fire orbs to recover assist. Their Evo form's active skill cooldown is 1 turn shorter and swaps the board expansion for an HP buff. This Evo is more damage focused, but it still has some utility with its hard L and heal OE+, the latter of which might not matter that much since it's only 1. But maybe you're running Circlia as your cleric, who I feel doesn't quite cut it in the healing department. So with both of these units in your team, you could have enough healing to better cope with thorns and RCB debuffs. Both units require you to match fire orbs, whether it be to recover assist or to deal damage. So if your team doesn't match these orbs, then this unit might not have that much use. I really wish one of their attributes were non-fire. The equip is much more useful due to its effective skill boost and its mix of utility and damage awakenings. The delay active skill is also very interesting as it gives a long-lasting absorption voiding effect, but will obviously require careful planning to get its full potential. Be careful if you do plan to use both its haste and voiding effects, since the latter ones can be overridden. For example, Paimon's or Gouten's equip's active skill effects will override the same delayed effects, so you have to pay mind to your activation order. All three forms of this $30 unit are pretty useful, and that more so goes for the equip. Therefore, it may be very tempting to purchase this unit and skip this lackluster REM, and especially so if you like any strong units with active skills that buff HP or see a lot of value in this unit's equip. Gouten Bad Badtz-Maru is a very decent Dark Orb generator that enables a lot of farming teams for endgame dungeons with various dark leaders like Malzeno, Arkberza, and Sukuna in the near future. Thankfully, they are exchangeable, but you'll need 15 6-star and above Sanrio units to exchange for a single copy. This unit is yet another addition to the vast number of Dark Orb generators, but this unit stands apart for being able to cap break your subs. This damage output increase ensures and enables faster kills in dungeons like SN2, SN3, and SN4 with them either as leaders or as a sub. Even though you'd expect a team to run 2 of these for a system, more commonly teams only use 1 copy, so if you're interested in one of these dark teams, you could get away with just 1 copy. I have playlists linked in the description below, so check them out to see if any of these teams look interesting and feasible. They might help you decide whether you want to exchange for Gouten Bad Badtz-Maru or other Sanrio units. Gouten Bad Badtz-Maru synergizes with a lot of dark teams. The rest of the notable Sanrio units are a bit too locked into more specific teams though, and these are not as popular as dark. Pochacco is tied to fire, Ollie KIRIMICHAN to water, and My Melody to wood. Of course you could use all of these units in rainbow or rainbow-ish teams, but if you have been active for a while, you might have access to more flexible units that work just as well, if not better, like Kohaku or Ordeal Ra. The Raffine Kitty and Kuromi bundles don't have much value in my opinion, since Raffine Kitty competes with Ordeal Ra and Feline Raffine, who are more accessible since one's a Pantheon and the other one was exchangeable, albeit expensive and questionable. Kuromi Alexander is only a damage stick with 2 tedious transformations. Their equip is interesting, but definitely not worth the money. Overall, I think the way to go for this collab is to avoid rolling as much as possible and exchange for what you want. All but the bundled units that I mentioned here are exchangeable, but might require some rolling since they all ask for a lot of 6-star and above Sanrio units. Other good exchanges like Veroah Kitty can take GFEs as fodder, so you might not need to roll at all. If you do need to roll, I would try my luck with the 7-stone machine. All of these useful units are in that lineup, and even if you don't get any of them, at the very least, everything you roll can be used as trade fodder. This is all very pricey, so again, I would hold off and try to save my stones for future events. JJK should follow Sanrio, and if you plan on getting Sukuna, you might want to pick up Gouten Bad Badtz-Maru, but this unit is not required for some teams, specifically the optimized ones to farm SN4. Around the same time, we might see the 12 Magic Stone Super Gatfest, which is great if you want to pick up the new GFEs or stock up on GFE fodder. Then, the next events might be Digimon followed by Disney, but we have no idea if we'll get either collab. Teams from those collabs don't really use anything from Sanrio, so it's looking to me that Sanrio units don't have that much lasting value. The Gung-Ho collab just started in JP, and I'm not that familiar with the units yet, but I think it's safe to assume that Sanrio units are not relevant in those teams either. The Christmas REM should return in late December, but we don't have any details yet. Light and fire units are plentiful in that seasonal, so maybe if Gung-Ho releases a strong fire leader, they could make great use of Orya Pochacco, but I still feel Sanrio is not worth the gamble, whether it be the exchanges or the bundle. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Before I let you go, please share your favorite things from Path this past year. The year is almost over, and I plan to share the results in a Path quarterly video to celebrate. I have gotten a bunch of answers from some of you, but I would obviously like more data, because I'm sure that there's at least one person that is an L enjoyer. Okay, probably not, but please help me out and fill the form linked in the description below. That does it for this video. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.